The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us at the web at nfreading.org. Good morning. Your Niagara Frontier radio reading service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Monday, April 27th. And your readers today are
Ed Howard
and Ted Pajacki. And we welcome you this morning on this Victory Monday between the Sabres and the Bills draft. It's newspapers filled with sports articles, but we're going to find a few other articles to fill in between all that good news. And, you know, when it's a big weekend like this, the sun is shining on us, not a cloud in the sky.
It's going to be a beautiful day.
It sure is. And let's look at that forecast now for this week. It's going to be sunny for much of the day today and warmer with a high of around 71 degrees. It'll be partly cloudy tonight with a low of 55. There will be periods of rain and a thunderstorm possible tomorrow, and downpours can bring localized damaging wind gusts. The high will be 62 tomorrow, down about 10 degrees. Wednesday will be periods of rains, and it's going to be so heavy that it may be ponding on the roadways. So it'll get a little bit better for the rest of the week after that. The normal high and low are 60 and 41. And as we look back at our records, we have to go back over 100 years to see the record. The record high was 84 in 1921, and the record low was 23 in 1919. And we have something back in the weather today, the weather trivia. Bees and what type of storm occur in swarms? And the answer is tornadoes. And that's all the weather that's fit to read.
Well, we'll enjoy today while we've got it and hunker down for the next couple of days, I guess.
That's right. You're right there.
We'll turn now to the front page of today's Buffalo News, and the first story is Trump again targeted by shooter. Issues involving protection find their way back into the spotlight. An attempted attack at Saturday's White House Correspondents' Dinner is spurring fresh questions about the security around President Trump and other top officials. The armed assailant, who investigators believe was staying at the Washington Hilton where the dinner was being held, ran past a security checkpoint before being apprehended after a brief pursuit that included gunfire. Administration officials said Sunday they believe he was targeting U.S. officials, including Trump, who faced a pair of assassination attempts in 2024. Trump and others have praised the Secret Service for the response and for successfully quelling the attack, but it may yet prompt a review of precautions and procedures as Trump wondered aloud about the vulnerabilities of the venue. The security for the event was essentially designed as a tight perimeter around the ballroom, with the rest of the hotel largely open to the public, raising questions about how close a potential attacker could get. I think we have to take a look at the outer perimeter. Representative Michael McCaul, a Republican of Texas and former chairman of the House Homeland Security Panel, told Bloomberg this weekend on Sunday, "I do think we'll be analyzing that." Trump, speaking after the incident, called Hilton, quote, "not a particularly secure building," unquote, and said again on Sunday morning that the attempted attack reinforces the need for his controversial White House ballroom project, saying that will be more secure. But it's not an obvious venue for the annual media dinner, which is hosted by the White House Correspondents Association. Nonetheless, the ordeal exposed long-standing vulnerabilities in how one of Washington's most high-profile annual events is secured, current and former law officials said. The Hilton, in particular, is already infamous in Washington as the site where then-President Ronald Reagan was shot by gunman John Hinckley Jr. outside the hotel doors. The hotel is still referred to colloquially in Washington as the Hinckley Hilton. Changes were made after that shooting, including building a secure entry for the president. At the hotel on Saturday, guests and members of the public were able to enter the hotel with relative ease, such as by flashing an invitation, and did not have to go through security magnometers similar to those at an airport or a major sporting event until they were moving toward the ballroom 2 levels down from the main floor. Current and former law enforcement officials said the single checkpoint was not as thin as it appears. Every other point of entry into the ballroom was frozen and manned by standing agents, making the magnetometers the only viable path in. In addition, the U.S. Secret Service's primary role is to safeguard the president, his family, and key dignitaries, and the gunmen didn't make it into the ballroom where they were. That venue, the larger venue, and its occupants fall under the protective umbrella of the site plan, but when things go bad, my primary objective is whoever my protectee is, said Anthony Cangelosi, a former Secret Service agent and a lecturer at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. When you come up with a site security plan, you're looking for site vulnerabilities and ways to address them. Still, officials acknowledge that the setup is difficult to defend publicly and that to most civilians, the security perimeter felt dangerously close to the accident. Even the suspect apparently was surprised by what he described as lax security. Quoting now, "I expected security cameras at every bend, bugged hotel rooms, armed agents every 10 feet, metal detectors out the wazoo," he wrote in a manifesto to family members and seen by Bloomberg. Quoting again, "What I got," and in parentheses, "who knows, maybe they're pranking me," is nothing. He added, "The security at the event is all outside, focused on protesters and current arrivals, because apparently no one thought about what happens if someone checks in the day before." The sprawling hotel, where the event is held, boasts more than 1,100 rooms, several restaurants, and bars. What the Secret Service did after the shooting largely tracked protocol, officials said. Members of the counter-assault team, heavily armed agents in tactical gear, held the stage after Trump and other top officials were evacuated, taking the high ground over the ballroom floor. Secret Service Director Sean Curran defended the agency's response in a statement Sunday, quoting, "That individual, when he charged the checkpoint, was apprehended," Curran said. "It shows that our multi-layered protection works." Trump himself praised the response. "I thought the Secret Service and law enforcement, and that includes D.C. police, law enforcement, was great. I really thought they were great, and I would be the first to complain that they weren't, believe me," he said during a Fox News interview on Sunday morning.
Also on today's front page, $1.4 billion in tax breaks for 125 jobs? Are data centers a boon or a boondoggle? In rural Genesee County, the nationwide controversy over data center development is playing out. Stream Data Center wants to invest $19.5 billion in the data center complex that would span 2.2 million square feet, or roughly the equivalent of 22 Home Depot stores in the Science, Technology, and Advanced Manufacturing Park, or it's called the STAMP. The Town of Alabama project would use 500 megawatts of electricity, equivalent to half of the generating capacity of the new nuclear facilities Governor Kathy Hochul proposed for upstate New York in the summer. Critics say Stream's project would harm the environment and receive massive tax breaks worth $1.4 billion from the Genesee County Economic Development Center in exchange for just 125 permanent jobs. That works out to $11.2 million in taxpayer subsidies for every job. And critics warn that the project will drive up electricity prices for all homes and businesses throughout Western New York. Because the project would consume a huge amount of power at a time when demand is already climbing, they say the data center would tighten electricity supplies and lead to higher electricity prices unless new power plants and renewable sources are brought online quickly and in volume. Kasia Trasinska, the senior research analyst with Good Jobs First, said the request for $11.2 million in subsidies for every job that would be created at Stream's project is one of the largest that she has ever seen. I don't think this is a good deal for the community, truth be told, Trasinska said. For its part, Stream says its project would provide high-paying jobs and generate an estimated $550 million over 30 years in new tax revenues and direct payments to local municipalities and schools, which the community can use to make other investments to support future economic development. Stream officials say they are striving to minimize the project's physical and noise impact on its surroundings. And while they acknowledge growing anti-data center sentiment around the country, Stream officials say developers and their projects ought to be judged on their individual merits. We're hosting community meetings, said Oysen Omerku, the Dallas Stream's chief development officer. We're engaging. We're trying to dispel those myths. And I think the industry has been hurt by a lot of the negative development that has happened. State Senator Liz Krueger from Manhattan has called for New York State to impose a 3-year moratorium on approval of new data centers of more than 20 megawatts. It's time to hit the pause button, give ourselves some breathing room to adopt strong policies on data centers, and avoid getting caught in a bubble that will burst and leave New York utility customers footing a huge bill, Krueger said. While the data center debate is picking up steam in New York State, it has already been a prominent topic in some other states where data center development has been going on longer and is far more extensive. U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, joined by U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, called for imposing a moratorium on construction of new AI data centers until strong national safeguards are in place to ensure that AI is safe and effective. U.S. Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, whose state is home to a plethora of data centers, called the moratorium idea idiocy, arguing it would hand an advantage to competitors such as China. Meanwhile, Maine is on the verge of becoming the first state to impose a temporary ban on building new data centers, which would remain in effect until November of 2027. A total of 11 states have introduced legislation to restrict or ban data center development since late 2025. Good Jobs First opposes any subsidies for data centers on the premise that those projects would get built without incentives, given the demand for them, and as use of artificial intelligence and other online services grow, Trasinska said. Some states and communities are looking at that approach. North Carolina Governor Josh Stein has proposed eliminating or modifying incentives that the state awards to data centers. Other data center projects are on the horizon in New York. Developer John Williams plans to build a data center campus at the former Tonawanda Coke industrial site. TeraWulf is adding AI computing to its facility in the town of Somerset in Niagara County. And Stream's project would serve an undisclosed Fortune 50 tenant. Its project has generated opposition over its location near wildlife refuge and the Tonawanda Seneca Nation. Casey Stewart, a Buffalo River Land Trustee board member, called the data center's placement unwise. He also said the project could deter visits to the Iroquois Wildlife Refuge and fishing at Old Orchard Creek.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, and the time is 15 minutes past the hour, and it's time now to turn to the editorial page. And today's editorial is headlined, Answers Please. Bill's officials owe an explanation to the Community Benefits Agreement Committee members and vendors. When will minority and women-owned business enterprise vendors get a foot in the door of the new Bills Stadium? It's a simple but vital question, key to the economic impact of the $2 billion venue. The officials in charge of knowing the answer owe an explanation to the members of the committee overseeing the stadium's Community Benefits Agreement, as well as to the vendors, of why it's taking so long to get a straight answer. Perhaps what is getting in the way is that the Bills and Legends Hospitality have non-disclosure agreements that cover business operations and do not allow them to share publicly the timeline for hiring these businesses or information about conversations between them, as conveyed by Penny Samea to the Buffalo News' Mike Petro. Samea is the Bills' vice president for new stadium relations. But panel members make a good point. Businesses interested in concessions operations at the new stadium are in the dark about when they will be able to bid for the work. They also want to know about opportunities in stadium operations. Meanwhile, the Bills are gearing up, confirming at the Community Benefits Oversight Committee meeting that the first large-scale event in the stadium will be the return of the Blue and Red practice on August 8th. It's good that the Bills say they are still on track, but these businesses need to have the same confidence. It isn't enough when Samea says that with negotiations, there's always a sense of confidentiality. Samea is right when he points out that this is receiving more scrutiny because there is a Community Benefits Oversight Committee. That's why he needs to provide more information on how things are progressing. Member Mo Sumbundu, Director of Community Relations for Governor Kathy Hochul, said it best, "The committee is not asking for confidential or proprietary information. They just want to define a hiring timeline." This is critical information for minority and women-owned business vendors wanting to apply for concessions opportunities. As Petro's article breaks it down, of the retailers, vendors, and service companies used in new stadium maintenance and operations, 30% are expected to be minority and women-owned business entities. Legends is also expected to make disabled veteran-owned businesses 6% of the pool of vendors and service companies hired. And Legends is also required to purchase 30% of its food products used at the new stadium from minority and women-owned business entities, certified food service companies. Preference is expected to be given to food and beverage items that are produced and manufactured in New York. Legends will also be required to administer food and beverage service mentorship programs for minority and women-owned business entities. Meeting these goals will be challenging. Even Sumbundu voiced uncertainty about whether enough of these certified businesses are ready to scale up to the task. The paltry number of small businesses, 80, who have contacted the team's workforce development consultant, Developments by GEM, about getting certified is discouraging. Less than 20% of those who have attained state or county certification as of February, and some are still trying to get certified. By their account, Legends reached out to known minority and women-owned business entities, certified companies in the food products industry, and carried out due diligence. If that is really the case, and one local business owner, Connie Irvin, casts doubt on Legends' outreach claims, then let the committee overseeing the Community Benefits Agreement and the public know when they can expect a hiring timeline.
And we turn now to another voice column, and today's issue is on Labor, and it was submitted by Roberta Reardon, who is the commissioner of the New York State Department of Labor. And the headline is, New York leads the nation in the fight for equal pay. A report from the New York State Department of Labor reveals the Empire State has the smallest gender gap wage gap of any state. This achievement reflects proactive policies under Governor Kathy Hochul's leadership. The gender wage gap measures the pay disparity between women and men. Not just a number, it reflects systemic issues, undervaluing women's work, disproportionate caregiving, and their concentration in lower-paying industries. The governor and the department address these through transformative initiatives. First, historic investments in child care. An $8.6 billion investment over 4 years, plus a plan for universal child care, has expanded to access to subsidies, increased provider reimbursement, and offered grants for wage increases. This supports the predominantly female child care workforce. Next, strengthening families' financial security. The largest expansion of the Empire State Child Tax Credit provides crucial relief to working parents. Next, legislation for working caregivers. Our paid family leave program allows bonding with new children and caring for loved ones. And finally, raising wages and protections in women-dominated industries. This includes the Fashion Workers Act, which combats wage exploitation for workers and models, and minimum wage increases indexed to inflation. These interventions yield tangible results. Our report shows stronger earnings growth among women and increased white-collar employment for women. The participation of mothers in the labor force is rising, linked to increased child care and flexible work arrangements. Women in New York now earn 91 cents for every dollar a man earns. However, our work is unfinished. While narrowing the gap, the wage gap persists, remaining substantially larger for women of color. The motherhood penalty impacts women's earnings, and the high cost of child care continues to burden families. As Commissioner of Labor, I commit to data-informed, responsive policies. Under Hochul, New York is setting a national standard for progress and equity. We will build on this momentum, striving for a future where every woman achieves her full economic potential, free from discrimination and empowered by supportive policies. Together, we are building a stronger, more equitable New York for all.
Well, next we have today's editorial cartoon, and it comes from Steve Kelly of Creator Syndicate. And this has to do with what's going on in Virginia with redistricting and so on, such that it has been, voters there have decided to make their congressional districts heavily Democrat-oriented. And the headline on the cartoon is The Spanburglar. Now, this refers to Abigail Spanberger, who is the new governor there. And we see her dressed in the clothing of McDonald's Hamburglar, although with long blonde hair as she has, and she's running off with a tray of hamburgers which are labeled votes, but catching her with a firm grip on the seat of her pants is a dog labeled the courts. And so I think what we're saying here is that the governor, having supported this rearrangement of congressional districts in the state, making it more heavily Democratic, is being restrained by the courts, who are going to judge whether this move is constitutional or not. But that's just my opinion. You can decide for yourself.
Now, is that a product placement endorsement for McDonald's?
It might be.
I wonder if they got a kickback on that. Our first opinion piece comes from Carl Liebsdorf, and its headline is, "Pair of Primaries Will Test Trump's Grip on the GOP." Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's dramatic defeat has sparked substantial speculation over its potential fallout, both in Europe and in the United States. The most immediate question for the U.S. is whether the backlash against personal corruption, policy failures, and authoritarian rule that did in Orban was a precursor of one that could soon start to shake the power of his American soulmate, President Trump. Republican primaries next month in the red states of Indiana and Kentucky may give the first clues into whether the similar factors causing Trump's poor poll ratings are beginning to threaten his vice-like hold on the whatever. There seems to be a word missing here. At issue is a handful of Republican office holders who had the temerity to challenge Trump and see if they can survive his efforts to purge them. Their survival might spur resistance from other Republicans who have refused to speak out against the president, even if they privately oppose what he is doing and how he is doing it. On May 5th in Indiana, 5 Republican state senators who helped kill a Trump-inspired congressional redistricting plan in December faced primary foes who went to the White House in March to pose for pictures and get their president's personal endorsements. And on May 19th in Kentucky, Representative Thomas Massie, a conservative purist who led the fight to open the Justice Department files of convicted sexual predator Jeffrey Epstein and opposed Trump on the Iran war and other issues, faces a primary challenge from a Trump-backed Republican rival. The Indiana contests stem from the legislative showdown in December, in which state Senate voted 31-19 against a state House passed plan to eliminate the seats of the state's 2 Democratic U.S. representatives, part of a national effort to bolster the GOP's chances of holding the House. Senate President Roderick Bray and 6 other members of the GOP leadership joined the chamber's Democrats in rejecting the plan. Bray is not up for re-election this year, but Trump has followed up threats he made during the fight by backing challengers to 5 who are running and endorsing several other legislative hopefuls. Meanwhile, his allies, including Republican U.S. Senator Jim Banks and conservative groups like Club for Growth, Turning Point Action, and Hoosier Leadership for America, are spending over $5 million to support the senatorial challengers. But it is not a one-sided fight. Among those opposing Trump's purge effort is former Indiana Governor Mitch Daniels, a non-Trump traditional Republican who has largely stayed out of the president's line of fire. I think it's important that people who are fine public servants and have shown in other contexts and shown up in principle here and showed bravery in doing so, that ought to be rewarded, not punished. And it's certainly not going to be punished by people from several hundred miles away who couldn't find Indiana with a road map, Daniels told radio station WFYI in Indianapolis. And Trump's first-term vice president, former Governor Mike Pence, endorsed one of Trump's legislative targets. In such fights, he said, I would simply defer to the state legislatures and the governors to determine what they think is appropriate. Meanwhile, across the Ohio River in Kentucky, Another bitter internal GOP battle pits Massey, a 7-term GOP incumbent, and Ed Gallerine, a former Navy SEAL for whom Trump made a campaign appearance last month. Massey is a complete and total disaster as a congressman, and frankly, as a human being, Trump told a rally last month in a tiny northern Kentucky community of Hebron. I just can't stand this guy. A final conservative, often critical of Trump's authoritarianism, Massey has emerged as the president's single most consistent Republican foe in the U.S. House. Although Speaker Mike Johnson removed him from the powerful House Rules Committee, he still wields substantial leverage because of the GOP's slim 3-vote majority. That means it only takes 2 recalcitrant Republicans to block the leadership on the House's many strictly partisan votes, and one of those is often Massey. For example, when the House voted 214 to 213 to reject a Democratic challenge to the president's war-making powers, Massey was the only Republican to vote with the Democrats. Many of his one-member stands are primarily aimed at enforcing proper congressional procedures. For example, in 2020, during the COVID pandemic, he opposed a unanimous consent request to pass a relief bill because he felt members should be required to cast votes on the record. I read the bills. I try to make the decision of what is best, Massey told a GOP dinner last month in Williamstown, and sometimes it means voting no. Probably the main thing that upset Trump is Massey's role, along with Representative Ro Khanna of California, in forcing the administration to release files connecting Epstein with many prominent people in public life, including Trump, though without evidence so far that they joined in his wrongdoing. Candidate Trump promised to make the files public, but his Justice Department has moved slowly in doing so, even after Congress passed and signed a Massey-Khanna bill requiring it. Until now, Trump's small number of GOP congressional critics have mainly spoken out after deciding to retire, like North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis has done in this past year. The Indiana and Kentucky primaries will show if Republicans opposed the president's policies and methods can do so more openly and eventually simply survive politically.
Well, our second opinion column comes from Shannon Watkins, who writes for the Fulcrum, and the headline on her article is "A Blueprint for Civil Discourse on Campus Amid Polarization. Students are hungry for civil discourse. Universities must seize this moment to build ideological bridges on their campuses." Americans are not optimistic about the state of higher education. A 2025 Pew Research survey revealed that 7 in 10 adults believe that higher education in the United States is generally going in the wrong direction. 46% say that colleges and universities do a fair or poor job of, quote, providing opportunities for students to express their own opinions, close quote. And 45% negatively rate these institutions' job of, again quoting, exposing students to a wide range of opinions. Students engage in self-censorship out of fear of how their views will be perceived by professors and peers. Fear of engaging with ideological opponents and the resulting breakdown of communication are surely fueling polarization in our country. Respectful conversation is the key to healing our civic culture. Room for optimism exists, however. There is a steady growth in efforts to cultivate the civil exchange of ideas on campus. Take, for example, the class at Kalamazoo College in Michigan that recently made headlines. Professor Justin Berry's senior seminar on political polarization requires students to do the seemingly impossible: interview someone with very different views for 30 minutes to an hour. The results were unexpectedly fruitful. Despite covering points of disagreement, students reported surprise at finding out how much they had in common with their interviewees. And the conversations sometimes went far beyond the required time limits into multiple sessions for multiple hours. Students' experiences in this class are a testament to what close listening and courteous communication can produce. At UNC Chapel Hill, the Courageous Conversations discussion led by Professor John Rose is another example of students' eagerness to engage. The discussion focused on the fairness of college admissions post-affirmative action, which formally lasted an hour. Students lingered to continue the conversation in smaller groups. For their part, state legislatures should require that institutions be the homes of civil and open debate by passing legislation based on the Campus Intellectual Diversity Act. Students are hungry for civil discourse. Universities must seize this moment and build ideological bridges on their campuses. Doing so may help turn the tide of public opinion and, most importantly, deepen students' understanding of and empathy for their fellow citizens.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is 36 minutes after the hour. In national news, states revise custody laws to assist immigrants. As immigration authorities carry out what President Donald Trump has promised will be the largest mass deportation operation in U.S. history, several states are passing laws to keep children out of foster care when their detained parents have no family or friends available to take temporary custody of them. The federal government doesn't track how many children have entered foster care because of immigration enforcement actions, leaving it unclear how often it happens. In Oregon, as of February, 2 children were placed in foster care after being separated from their parents in immigration detention cases, according to Jake Sutherland, a spokesperson for the Oregon Department of Human Services. Before fall 2025, this simply never happened before, Sunderland said. As of mid-February, nearly 70,000 people were being held by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The record 73,000 people in detention in January represented an 84% increase compared with one the year before. According to reporting from ProPublica, parents of 11,000 children who are U.S. citizens were detained from the beginning of Trump's term through August. The news outlet Notice reported in February that at least 32 children or detained or deported parents were placed in foster care in 7 states. Sandy Santana, the executive director of Children's Rights, a legal advocacy organization, said he thinks the actual number is much higher. That, to us, seems really, really low, he said. Separation from a parent is deeply traumatic for children and can lead to various health and psychological problems, including post-traumatic stress disorder. Prolonged, intense stress can lead to more frequent infections in children and the developmental issues. That toxic stress is also associated with damage to areas of the brain responsible for learning and memory, according to KFF. Maryland, New York, Washington, D.C., and Virginia amended existing laws during Trump's first term to allow guardians to be granted temporary parental rights for immigration enforcement reasons. Now, the enforcement surge that began after Trump returned to office last year has prompted a new wave of state responses. In New Jersey, lawmakers are considering a bill to amend a state law that allows parents to nominate standby or temporary guardians in the cases of death, incapacity, or debilitation. The bill would add separation due to federal immigration and enforcement, as well as another allowable reason. Nevada and California passed laws last year to protect families that were separated by immigration and enforcement actions. California's law, called the Family Preparedness Plan Act, allows parents to nominate guardians and share custodial rights instead of having them suspended while they're detained. They regain their full parental rights if they are released and are able to reunite with their children. There are significant legal barriers to reunification once a child is placed in state custody, said Juan Guzman, the director of Children's Court and Guardianship at the Alliance for Children's Rights, a legal advocacy organization in Los Angeles. If a parent's child is placed in foster care and the parent cannot participate in required court proceedings because they are in detention or have been deported, it's less likely that they will be able to reunite with their child, Guzman said. An estimated 5.6 million children are U.S. citizens who live with a parent or family member who does not have legal immigration status, according to research from the Brookings Institute, a Washington, D.C. based think tank. Within the group, 2.6 million children have two parents lacking legal status. Santana said he expects the number of family separation cases to grow as the Trump administration continues its immigration enforcement campaign, putting more children at risk of being placed into foster care. ICE directives require the agency to make efforts to facilitate detained parents' participation in family court, child welfare, or guardianship proceedings. But Santana said it's uncertain whether ICE is complying with those rules. ICE officials did not respond to requests for comment for this report. Before the change in California's law, the only way a parent could share custodial rights with another guardian was if the parent was terminally ill, Guzman said. If parents create a preparedness plan and identify an individual to assume guardianship of their children, the state child welfare agency can begin the process of placing the children with that individual without opening a formal foster care case, he added.
Well, our next story is headlined, Medicaid Rule on Abortion Providers Set to Expire. A controversial rule enacted last year that denies federal Medicaid funding to abortion providers is likely to expire this summer, despite anti-abortion pressure on Republicans to renew it. Leaders in Congress in recent days have insisted that a new federal spending bill needs to be as stripped down as possible and focused on funding related to immigration enforcement amid a 2-month partial shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. They've also suggested the rule could be revisited in future legislation, but likely not before the current budget measure expires on July 4th. The legislation Congress is considering now has to be very narrow and tight, said Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican of South Dakota, in a statement shared by a spokesperson. But we will be looking for, obviously, opportunities to address not only Planned Parenthood, but some of the other issues that might fit in a reconciliation bill. House Speaker Mike Johnson is not considering a renewal of the rule in the House version of the bill either, the Washington Examiner recently reported. The broad tax and spending measure President Trump signed into law last summer strips federal Medicaid funding from organizations that provide abortions and received more than $800,000 in reimbursements in fiscal year 2023. The rule primarily affects Planned Parenthood as well as independent health care nonprofits such as health imperatives in Massachusetts and Maine family planning. Medicaid, which provides health insurance to mostly people with lower incomes, is funded jointly by the federal government and the states, with the federal government covering roughly two-thirds of the cost. The rule, included in Trump's tax and spending law, was presented by supporters as a ban on funding for abortions, but prevented clinics from being reimbursed under federal Medicaid for birth control, infection testing and treatment, and other reproductive and primary care services. A federal rule already prevents federal funding for abortion, except in cases of rape, incest, and life endangerment. Some states already allow state Medicaid to cover abortion services. Others, such as South Carolina, have excluded Planned Parenthood from their Medicaid programs, and South Carolina's law was upheld last year by the Supreme Court. The rule has survived multiple legal challenges, and its effects have been felt throughout the country. Planned Parenthood says more than 50 health centers across 18 states closed last year, 23 due to the Medicaid rule, according to a recent Democratic congressional report, and the rest due to the temporary loss of federal funds for family planning and preventive health care and other factors. The organization has reported that visits for contraceptive and cancer screenings at Planned Parenthood have dropped by double digits. So much damage has already been done, Alexis McGill Johnson, president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Action Fund, said in a statement, "Since Planned Parenthood was defunded, fewer patients went to Planned Parenthood health centers for breast exams, birth control, and IUDs, and other long-acting reversible contraception compared to the same period the year before."
Our next article is an interesting one on education with a little bit of a twist. The headline is Grades for Grabs. At about 5 p.m., the corner bodega at Heberton Avenue and Ann Street comes alive. Children gather outside Zach's Finest Deli in Staten Island's Port Richmond neighborhood, including middle school girls with creased yellow report cards tucked into their backpacks, while younger kids dart between them, some parents trailing behind. At the center of the gathered boys and girls in the bodega, manager Wael Al-Selwi, better known as Wally to those on the block and as Old Ak to the hundreds of thousands who follow him on TikTok and Instagram. In this particular afternoon, he calls out nicknames and gives high fives as students from nearby William A. Morris Intermediate School number 61 show him their report cards. "Let's go," Al-Selwi says, praising a kid's grade on a recent math test. Over the past 3 years, thousands of students came through the deli's doors for Al-Selwi's Grades for Grabs initiative, which incentivizes kids to earn good grades with free snacks and prizes. Those who score below 80% can grab $10 worth of items, and kids who score above 90% earn their pick of snacks, a $100 bill, and a t-shirt. "These kids are our future," Al-Selwi says. "We're here to help them. We're here to help guide them." It all started with a bet. In 2023, Al-Selwi made a 12-year-old Zamir Davis a bet that if he brought in his report card with good grades, he could get whatever he wanted in the store. Zamir held up his end of the bargain. As Zamir kept improving his scores, Al-Selwi shared videos of their encounters on TikTok. "I told you I'd get on the honor roll," Zamir exclaims as he runs through the bodega doors in one video, which has since garnered more than 1.7 million likes. "No way! You did it! He did it! You the man, Zamir," Al-Selwi replied. The video shows Zamir's reward: bags of spicy sweet chili Doritos, a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich, and cookies and cream milkshake topped with Oreos and Hershey Pieces. Things snowballed from there. People traveled from Illinois, Oklahoma, even Canada to show Al Selway their children's grades. In November, during many schools' marking periods, lines of 300 to 400 kids stretched outside the deli each day. For months, Al Selway funded the program out of his pocket. His brother, Nash Al Selway, created a website with merchandise and started a GoFundMe as the program grew. Since then, they've raised nearly $500,000 and remains active to today. So many kids were coming. It's like I don't want to close the door. To see his relationship with the kids and the people, it's amazing to see it because you learn from it, his brother said. For Al Selway, it's about giving kids confidence. He immigrated from Yemen, and his 3 daughters still live back there. When the neighborhood kids come, I see my own kids in them, Al Selway said. He adds that grades for grabs is not about perfection. Students who improve from failing to passing get the same prize as those with the top grades. He's seen kids go from 55% to 98% average on test. It shows. It doesn't matter where you stand now, he says. It's what you're going to do about it.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555, and we have one listing today for Dale J. Eckel, Sr. of Orchard Park, who passed away on April 23rd. The family will be present on today from 3 to 7 p.m. at the F.E. Brown Funeral Home at 6575 East Quaker Street in Orchard Park. If you need further information on this name, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555.
And now it's time for a look at the horoscope. And if today is your birthday, and it is our daughter's birthday, on Monday, April 27th, and this is pretty much her, you are reflective, thoughtful, and sensitive. You're also self-reliant and independent. Exciting changes will bring you increased personal freedom this year. Stay flexible. The stars show what kind of day it'll be. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, 1 difficult. Aries, 3 stars. With your ruler Mars in your sign, you have lots of energy. Plus you're chatty because Mercury is also in Aries. Tonight, get organized. Taurus, 4 stars. You love good wine, good food, good sex, and a nice place to live. And today, you might come close to fulfilling your dreams. This is a strong day for you because the moon is in your fellow Earth sign. I wish I was a Taurus.
I am.
Oh, I have to watch out for you. Tonight, play. Gemini, 3 stars. Today is the perfect day to relax at home and play things low-key. You might be involved with a female family member more than usual. Tonight, cocoon. Cancer, 4 stars. Enjoy time with a friend as well as interacting with groups and organizations today. Tonight, conversations. Leo, 3 stars. With the sun at the top of your chart now, you look wonderful to others. In fact, they see you as super competent and capable. Tonight, check your belongings. Virgo, 4 stars. Today the moon is in your sign, which makes you a tad more emotional than usual. However, it'll also slightly increase your good luck over other signs. Tonight, you're in charge. Libra, 3 stars. Be patient with others because fiery Mars is opposite your sign, which can make you feel irritated with others. Probably they're annoying. Tonight, privacy. Scorpio, 4 stars. Remember that you need more sleep this week. Don't be down on yourself if you sleep late. Fortunately, both Mercury and Mars are spurring you to accomplish what you want. Tonight, be friendly. Sagittarius, 3 stars. Once again, people notice you more than usual, and yes, some will know personal details about your private life. Tonight, you're admired. Capricorn, 4 stars. Do something different today as this week begins. You're eager for a bit of adventure and stimulation, a chance to see new places and meet new faces that will please you. Tonight, explore and learn. Aquarius, 3 stars. Home and family are your focus right now. You're keen to socialize, and romance is encouraging. Tonight, check your finances. And finally, Pisces, 3 stars. Today, you have to go more than halfway when dealing with others because the moon is opposite your side. Tonight, listen.
Well, next we look at today in history, and on this date in 1521, Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan was killed by a poisoned arrow during a skirmish between his crew and the local natives led by Chief Lapu-Lapu on the island of Mactan in the Philippines. In 1945, Italian fascist leader Benito Mussolini was arrested near the village of Dongo, Italy, as he attempted to flee disguised as a German soldier. In 1978, the deadliest construction accident in U.S. history killed 51 workers when a cooling tower collapsed at the Pleasance Power Station in Willow Island, West Virginia. An investigation revealed several safety violations, including missing bolts, improper concrete application, and a lack of ladders. And in 2020, global COVID-19 cases passed 3 million, with a death toll of 205,000, according to data from Johns Hopkins University.
You are listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Monday, April 27th. On your Niagara Frontier radio reading service, we will return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ed Howard
and Ted Pajacki.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Ted Pajak.
And I'm Ed Howard, and we're turning now to the city and regional section of the paper. And our first story is headlined, Dumbest Idea, Polling Cars Not Behind a Buffalo Bailout. The words raising taxes weren't in Erie County Executive Mark Poloncar's annual State of the County address on Thursday, but when he commended Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan for, quote, taking the actions necessary to right the city's fiscal ship, that's exactly what he meant. Ryan's proposal to raise city property taxes by 25%. Poloncarz hasn't been shy about heaping criticism on the administration of former Mayor Byron Brown. The frosty relationship between the two men has been no secret, exploding famously when Poloncarz called the city's inability to reopen roads after the 2022 Christmas weekend blizzard an embarrassment and threatened to take over city plowing operations. On Thursday, he referenced the city's, quote, years of mismanagement and disinvestment, end quote. We all deserve a city we can be proud of, not a city being held together by duct tape and Band-Aids, he said on the stage of Shays Performing Arts Center before a crowd of hundreds. If it sounds familiar, it's because Poloncarz and Ryan are reading from the same script. Together, they're dishing out sound bites and videos highlighting evidence of years of city neglect while touting their new efforts to work more collaboratively and defending the need to raise taxes on city residents. On Monday, the two are expected to stand together to announce a training program in which public works crews with the county will train city crews on how to hot patch potholes while taking the opportunity to bemoan how bad it is that the city didn't have the equipment or resources to do this before now. The two elected leaders are friends and allies, though within limits. Some city supporters have pointed to the millions the county invests in its parks and roads, almost all outside city boundaries. They suggest that the financial stability of Erie County should result in the county giving more direct cash investment in the city. County Comptroller Kevin Hardwick, who is expected to run for county executive next year, is the latest to suggest that the county provide unrestricted financial aid to assist the county's struggling cities, particularly Buffalo. Poloncarz, to put it mildly, does not agree. That would be the dumbest idea possible, he told the Buffalo News. Poloncarz said the county gives millions in direct operating support to the city's major arts and cultural organizations, many of which are city-owned assets, as well as the convention center and dozens of nonprofit human services agencies. Democratic county legislators have also directed millions of dollars through their Urban Initiatives Fund to support city efforts such as the recently announced county investment into the Jefferson Avenue Streetscape project. But no bailout is on the horizon. Poloncarz contends that specific targeted spending is the only way to ensure county money is responsibly used. He noted in his State of the County address that the county has invested $64 million in Buffalo projects and infrastructure since 2020. The county has invested a lot in the city of Buffalo and will continue to do it, Poloncarz said in remarks to the media after his address. It's just one of those things where they need to fix their own problem, and for too long, people just stuck their heads in the sand. He referred to the city's use of one-time federal American Rescue Plan money to temporarily plug the city's fiscal deficit, which he said delayed the inevitable fiscal crisis now imperiling the city. It doesn't take a genius to realize that if you cut your revenues and increase your spending, you're going to hit a fiscal cliff, he said, adding, I'm on the Fiscal Stability Authority for the city of Buffalo, the control board. We've been talking about this for years, and I've heard some council members who are like, no one brought this up. That's bull. By contrast, he noted, the county has incrementally raised property taxes every year. Ryan, who worked with Poloncarz for 2 decades, first as a county legislative staffer, then as a state assemblyman and senator, and now as mayor, knows not to expect restrained diplomacy when it comes to Poloncar's assessment where the city stands. Look, Mark's a straight shooter, Ryan said, recalling the aftermath of the county's red and green budget crisis when Poloncarz was county controller. We worked at really bringing fiscal sanity back to Erie County, so he knows how to do it. I learned a lot when I was doing that work, and that's why I'm applying today. Budget problems, you can't wish them away.
Next in local news, Museum of Science's new Science Stadium exhibit gets an assist from local sports franchises to connect science and sports. The Buffalo Museum of Science will capitalize on the region's love of our local professional sports teams and will also use the opportunity to teach about science and engineering through a huge new sports-themed exhibit called Science Stadium. The project was created in partnership with the Buffalo Bills, the Buffalo Sabres, and the Buffalo Bandits. Museum leaders said in a press release that the exhibit will connect science and sports through experiential and immersive exhibits. The STEM-focused project is about 50% complete and slated to open to the public in July. The $3 million needed for the project came from a mix of public and private funds, including $750,000 from New York State last month. STEM refers to educational initiatives that focus on science, technology, engineering, and math. Custom-built exhibits and Buffalo-specific elements will be incorporated into the project, ensuring the site truly is Buffalo's Science and Sport exhibit, Museum President and CEO Gary Sedal said. These are not things you can see at other museums, he said. Buffalo's 3 major professional sports franchises provided significant support to the project, including the use of team branding as well as photos and videos. In addition, the project will feature 3 thematic zones, each anchored by one of the things. So you come in and you see the Bills logo, or you come in and you see the Bandits logo. We're using the elite partners to get people excited, and then we come at them with the science contact, Sedal said. The Bill Zone will feature interactive activities that include a nod to tailgating, the do-it-yourself pregame parking lot entertainment that has made the Bills fans famous and sometimes infamous. Visitors to the Bill Zone will toss beanbags into folding tables to illustrate physics. No one will be allowed to actually jump onto the folding tables, as some enthusiastic Bills fans have been known to do prior to games. There are different weighted beanbags with these miniature tables, and you'll be tossing these beanbags, causing the tables to break. The idea is that our visitors will realize that different weighted objects can accomplish the task more effectively than others, Sedal said. Visitors can learn about the velocity with the help of an on-screen likeness of superstar Josh Allen, because velocity by itself is just not quite enough of a magnet to draw people who have only a passing interest in physics, Sedal said. But when you have someone like Josh standing there, and then we ask you to throw a ball at the screen, we can start talking about velocity, and we can start talking about angles and force. The Sabres section will focus primarily on sports medicine, adaptive sports and concussion protocol and management. The exhibit aims to raise awareness and provide accurate information about concussions, what happens in the head during a concussion, how to prevent one, and how to diagnose one. The content for the exhibit was developed in collaboration with the University at Buffalo and the Concussion Alliance. It's going to go over some more common athletic injuries and how to treat those injuries with our different populations. We're in the information stage, and there's a lot of information coming at us, left, right, and center all day long. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, and it's really important that we start getting messaging across to the people who are affected by concussions.
Well, our next story is headlined, Prosecution's Case in the 1993 Mindel Slaying Relied on 6 Reported Confessions. Prosecutors who sought to convict Brian Scott Lorenz for the 1993 slaying of Deborah Mindel presented the jury this month with no DNA evidence linking the accused to the killing, and they didn't have eyewitnesses to the crime or witnesses who placed Lorenz near the scene on Franklin Street in the city of Tonawanda on the winter afternoon in question. What prosecutors did have was 6 people who said Lorenz confessed to them in the days, months, and years since the 33-year-old mother was slain. Prosecutors also had a phone call Lorenz made to police in which he denied the February 17, 1993 killing, but said he was thinking about pleading guilty to manslaughter. After the jury on Friday convicted Lorenz of murder and burglary, here's a look at the basis for the prosecution's case, the testimony jurors heard about what Lorenz reportedly said and to whom. Jurors heard during the trial from 3 live witnesses who testified from the witness stand, and 3 of the witnesses died since they testified at the first trial in 1994, so their testimonies were read to the jury. Lorenz's defense attorneys argued to the jury that they needed to assess whether they could trust these witnesses, quote, in a case of this importance, unquote. In his closing argument, Assistant District Attorney Gene Partridge asked the jury what the chances were of 6 people inventing the same story. Is that just a random coincidence? Partridge asked the jurors. Is this defendant just an incredibly unlucky person? Jurors were read testimony from the 1994 trial from James Catherwood, who was incarcerated in Iowa with Lorenz for about a month in 1993. Catherwood, who has since died since the first trial, told the first jury Lorenz gave him details of the crime, some of which matched what happened to Deborah Mindel and some didn't. Catherwood told jurors at the original trial that Lorenz told him that, quote, doing somebody is the ultimate rush, close quote. He also testified that Lorenz told him the victim was bound with an electrical cord and burned with cigarettes, both of which were not true. Jurors heard from Carlos Gonzalez, age 52, has testified at all 3 of Lorenz's trials. Gonzalez testified that in early March 1993, he was staying at a friend's home in the Sheridan Parkside Apartments in the town of Tonawanda. He said Lorenz came over to the apartment and said he committed a robbery in Tonawanda and was trying to hide somewhere because the police were looking for him. Lorenz had a black duffel bag with him, and he was trying to get rid of some jewelry, Gonzalez told the jury. According to Gonzalez, Lorenz was walking back and forth in the apartment. Gonzalez heard Lorenz say, I can't believe I did it, and then he said either I can't believe I killed her or I can't believe I killed the girl. Lorenz's defense attorney asked Gonzalez about a statement he gave in 21 to investigators from the district attorney's office in which he said his brain was fried. Nancy Hummingbird, described as both a longtime friend of James Pugh, Lorenz's former co-defendant, as well as a woman Pugh was dating, died in 2019, so her testimony from 1994 was read to the jury. Hummingbird testified that Lorenz and Pugh came back to her home the evening of the homicide, which is when she heard Lorenz say that he strangled with a necktie and stabbed a man who surprised them while the 2 were committing a burglary. Hummingbird, in a taped June 24, 1993 interview with police, played for the jurors at the retrial, appeared unsure of some basic facts about the crime. Lorenz's defense attorneys accused the detective who interviewed her of feeding her information and pressing her to implicate him. James Fox testified as a live witness in this retrial, giving his first testimony in the case. He came to the attention of prosecutors only after he sent them a letter in March saying he had information told to him by Lorenz. Fox told the jury Lorenz admitted trying to subdue her and choking her with his hands until she wasn't moving or breathing. Anna Hardy, age 61, testified Lorenz came to her home in Buffalo on the day of the homicide with his clothes covered in blood and a scratch on his face. Hardy, who said at the time she knew Lorenz between about 6 months and a year, said Lorenz also had bruised knuckles. He was acting nervous and told her he got into a fight with someone down the street, Hardy told the jury. Lorenz had with him a black bag, inside of which was a hammer, black gloves, rope, and tape, Hardy testified. 2 days later, he came back to her home, she said, and told her he had choked and stabbed a woman in a home that he had broken into.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service, and the time is 15 minutes after the hour. And now, as we said before, it's Victory Monday, so we turn to the sports section. And across the entire front of the sports section, the headline is Boston Gets Buffaloed. And under that it says, in comfort zone, Sabres managed to ace the road test. And this is brought to us by Mike Harrington of the Buffalo News. He says, in Game 4, with an explosive 4-goal first period against the battered Bruins, the Sabres return home with a 3-1 lead and look like they can go the distance. The full-throttle Buffalo Sabres are back. No more dipping the toes in the playoff waters. And you absolutely can win in the postseason with the kind of hockey we've seen since December. The Sabres have been the National Hockey League's best team for the last 4.5 months, and they sure looked the part again in these 2 playoff games in Boston. Puck pressure from relentless forechecking, defensemen coming up into the play, finishing at the net, everyone moving their feet, anticipation where the puck is going, selling out for blocks, goaltending. You know those components. You've seen them for months. They all came together Sunday in a 6-1 bashing of the Boston Bruins that pushed the good folks in the hub one more Buffalo win away from being in the all Celtics all-time mode. For domination on the road, the quickest comparison you could find in Sabres history was their 7-1 punking of Philadelphia in 2006, when the Flyers were at home looking for a chance to force Game 7. The Sabres were never threatened in that game, as Chris Drury and Mike Greer each had 4-point nights. On Sunday, in taking a 3-1 first-round series lead, they went ahead 4-0 after the first 20 minutes of Game 4 in what could rate as the best first period they've ever played on the road in the postseason. Buffalo outshot the Bruins 19-5 and dominated them in shot attempts 34-13. Boston played hot potato with the puck, committing 10 giveaways. The Bruins fans pounded their team with richly deserved boos. It sounded a lot like the KeyBank Center over the past 10 years. For once, it was a great sound to hear. I thought tonight that first period was the best period we've played all year, Coach Lindy Ruff said. Puck pressure, scoring opportunities. As well, we moved the puck, got the puck up the ice, and didn't spend much time in our own end. In the rare instances when the Bruins actually had the puck, goaltender Alex Lyon stood tall. He has a 0.89 goals against average and .964 save percentage in his 3 appearances in this series. It's his crease for now. Lyon loved the maturity the Sabres showed in the second period. With a 4-0 lead, they just took the air out of the puck in the middle 20 minutes while dealing with their long change. The Bruins had just 6 high-danger scoring chances the entire game. Lyon became the 5th Sabres goaltender to earn wins in each of his first 2 career playoff starts with the franchise, and only Grant Fuhr in the 1993 Mayday, Mayday series with Boston had previously done so on the road. You could feel they pushed hard in the second period, and sometimes it's not always about trying to outpush them, Lyons said. Sometimes it's about accepting the push. We did a good job of that. We're not going to be on your toes for 60 minutes. That's an unrealistic task. I thought we did a great job of keeping them to the outside today. The Bruins came close to leaving Buffalo with a 2-0 lead in the series. To see them utterly discombobulated through most of Game 4 was hard to believe. The puck was a hot potato for most of the first period, as the Bruins were charged officially with 10 giveaways and probably could have been hit for more. David Pastrnak and Morgan Geekie were invisible, and Charlie McAvoy's puck troubles made him far too visible. According to the National Hockey League Stat Department, it was the first time the Bruins had ever fallen into a 4-0 first period deficit in a playoff game. And this was postseason contest number 706 in their history. Quite an accomplishment. Getting the 1-0 lead on Peyton Krebs' goal was massive. We wanted to make sure we took it to them right off the hop, not on our heels, getting on our toes right away, Krebs said. I was just trying to reload and get back. Tomer, that's Tage Thomerson, broke the play up in the middle. Tucky made a great pass, and I just put it in the net. It was a great play. Added defenseman Owen Power, that's huge, especially against a team that kind of clogs up the neutral zone. It was nice to score 4 in the first and make them open up pretty much. The Sabres became the first National Hockey League team to score 9 consecutive road goals within a single playoff series. Vegas did it at Minnesota in 2021, and the Buffalo streak was snapped only by Sean Corrali's garbage time goal with only 40 seconds left. It has been a wild turnaround in this series. The Sabres led for just 3 minutes and 24 seconds in the 2 games in Buffalo. The Bruins led for just 7:32 of the 2 games here. Meanwhile, Boston's lead time in KeyBank Center was a startling 99 minutes and 57 seconds, while Buffalo was in front 71-41 in Boston. The Bruins had plenty of discord in the wake of this one. Jeremy Swayman chirped his entire bench on his way off the ice after he got yanked 6 minutes into the third period after Buffalo's 6th goal. Coach Marco Sturm accurately called it embarrassing. McAvoy, a tiny -4 next to his name, dropped the F-bomb to emphasize his embarrassment. There were plenty of "Let's go Buffalo" chants in the building, and a clear mocking chant of Swayman, Swayman at one point. Heard almost nothing of Bruins fans in Buffalo, and plenty of Sabres fans appeared to come here to Boston, especially for this matinee on Sunday, with tickets far more available and far cheaper than what they are at the KeyBank Center. Our fans have been great, Ruff said. I can't say enough about how well traveled they were in the last half of the year and now in this playoff time. And now the Buffalo fans are 1 win away. Take it to the Bruins again on tomorrow on Tuesday, and they'll see a series-clinching victory for the first time in 19 years. Another drought might bite the dust.
Well, we'll continue on now with Rachel Lindsay's column, and she picks up by saying the Buffalo Sabres are on the precipice of accomplishing something that hasn't happened for the franchise in nearly 20 years. They're 1 win away from clinching a Stanley Cup playoff series for the first time since 2007. The Sabres scored 3 goals in the first 10 minutes of the 6-1 win over the Bruins in Game 4. Now the Sabres lead the best-of-7 series 3-1. The challenge for the Sabres in completing the task of finishing off the series: remain consistent, avoid overthinking. Just continue to stick with it, said Peyton Krebs, who takes a 4-game point streak into Tuesday's game at KeyBank Center, which will surely be packed to the rafters with fans who made for a raucous atmosphere in the Sabres' first 2 postseason games last week. You don't want to get ahead of yourself. You want to stay in the moment. Make sure to do the details and don't look too far into the future. It's a lot of fun in the now. We got to continue to be right here, right now, and believe in ourselves. On Sunday, the Sabres took advantage of the Bruins team that tinkered with its lineup ahead of Game 4, but certainly wasn't better for it. Instead, Boston was disjointed and at times appeared disoriented, especially after the Sabres poured it on early. The Sabres outshot the Bruins 19-5 in the first period and scored 3 goals in the opening 10 minutes of the win. The Sabres didn't ask questions about Swayman or about the Bruins' lack of resolve. The Sabres simply took advantage of it. They opened their lead to 6-0 on Tuch's third-period goal, and Sean Corrali finally beat Sabres goalie Alex Lyon with 40 seconds left in the game. We just immediately got right into our game, said Sabres defenseman Owen Power, who has 4 assists in his first 4 playoff games, playing really fast, got on their D, and causing turnovers and making plays. Obviously an ideal start, and hopefully we can bottle that up and do that in our next game too. The last time the Sabres won a playoff series, May 6th in 2007, when the Sabres took a second-round series from the New York Rangers 4-2, capping it in a 5-4 win at Madison Square Garden. That final year, they lost in the final first round to the Bruins in 2010 and to the Philadelphia Flyers in 2006. The Sabres said they know the weight that Game 5 carries. The burden is on them to get that 4th win, and they'll face a Bruins roster that isn't ready to trade its hockey sticks for razors to shave off that playoff stubble.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 27 minutes after the hour. And it's time to remember that there's also football in Buffalo. It was a big weekend here as the Bills had their draft and UB began their spring football practice. And there's a little bit of controversy over whether the Bills had a good or a bad draft. So this article here talks about that. It's called Ripe to Gripe. Fans need a chill pill. Judging Bean in the draft class now won't bring instant gratification. I get it. It's tempting in this social media era to have a reaction to everything, but it's really not necessary. That thought was top of my mind throughout the 3-day NFL draft, which wrapped up on Saturday evening. The toxicity that sometimes oozed from the Buffalo Bills fan base this weekend bordered on absurd. Perhaps, hopefully, that was limited to X, the social media platform that's not exactly known for measured, nuanced discussion. It's common for that platform to bring out the worst in us. But if it truly is shared by more than just a vocal online minority, well, that's a problem. No matter what President and General Manager Brandon Beane did, he couldn't seem to win. Trade down. How could he? Then he did it again and again? What is he, crazy? Beane made it clear ahead of the draft that his number of true first-round grades was down this year. My guess is he considered somewhere in the range of 15 to 18 players to be first-round talents. Once those players were gone, why not move down? The Bills are transitioning to a 3-4 defense under new coordinator Jim Leonhard. Finding players who fit what Leonhard wants to do makes perfect sense. Adding picks to build roster depth is a logical move. Beane did that by swinging 7 trades over the 3-day event. Based on the reaction to pretty much anything he did, however, Beane seems seemingly became public enemy number one in Buffalo. It's gone entirely overboard. Has he had his share of draft misses? Sure, just as every general manager does. But he's also hit big on many picks, which has seemingly been forgotten. So here's some groundbreaking analysis. Some of the picks being made this weekend will likely work out, and some of them won't. It's understandable that fans and/or media will have opinions, sometimes strong ones, on the players that Bean takes. That's a natural part of the cycle. I've disagreed with parts of Bean's roster construction. I thought for years the team should draft a vertical threat at wide receiver. I would have liked to have seen the team add a true nose tackle this weekend for Leonard's 3-4 defensive scheme. It didn't happen. So be it. The nonstop negativity isn't healthy, though. So allow me to serve as a ray of sunshine during these rainy days by providing a glass half full look at each of the Bills' selections. Edge rusher T.J. Parker, who entered the media room at One Bills Drive and shook every reporter's hand Saturday before starting his first news conference, should be an immediate member of the rotation up front. Parker's scouting reports make prominent mention of how he's a strong run defender, an area of weakness from last season and many seasons, and that the Bills are determined to shore up. Some guys are two-down players. Some guys are designated pass rushers. I feel like TJ has proven the last couple of years to bring a three-down skill set, and I just think that adds more value, Bean said. An improved run defense should give Parker, Greg Rousseau, and Bradley Chubb more opportunities to get after the opposing quarterback on third down. In the second round, the Bills traded up for Ohio State cornerback Davidson Igbinosun. That pick seems to have caused the most consternation among the fan base. The reason being, the Bills have their penciled-in starters at cornerback in Christian Benford and Maxwell Hairston. Conveniently, those losing their mind over the pick are ignoring the fact that Hairston couldn't stay healthy during his final college season at Kentucky and then was hurt twice as a rookie, missing the Bills' playoff games as a result. Are we really to believe that Hairston is going to make it through an entire season, starting all 17 games, and however many the Bills play in the postseason, when he's not able to do that 2 years in a row? Benford also missed 3 games in the regular season in 2025, and he left the 2024 AFC Championship game against Kansas City because of a concussion. The point is, depth at cornerback is an absolute necessity, and the Bills had none of it before this weekend. Was it the biggest need on the roster, as Bean said after the draft? Well, that's up for debate, but it was certainly absolutely a need for the team. Maybe it's a scar from last year, from the playoffs, but our depth is being tested for a variety of reasons. With the first pick of the 4th round, the Bills chose Boston College offensive lineman Jude Bowery. The team lost swing tackle Ryan Van Denmark and starting left guard David Edwards in free agency this offseason. Bean's number one priority always must be to protect quarterback Josh Allen. Bowery will come in and at least compete for a job, whether it's at guard or tackle. Bean's picks in the 4th round were actually met with applause online, or so it seemed. After Bowery, he chose UConn wide receiver Skylar Bell with the number 125 overall selection. Bell was a consensus All-American who finished in the top 4 of the nation in catches with 101 and with yards 1,278 and touchdown receptions 13. If there's one position fans have absolutely crushed Bean for not addressing, It's wide receiver. So he did with a pretty promising prospect, especially considering where Bell went in the draft.
Well, we'll stay with the NFL here and ask, did the NFL save the best for last? UB's Red Murdoch is now Mr. Irrelevant as the Broncos make the linebacker the final draft pick. Red Murdoch is Mr. Irrelevant. With the final pick of the NFL draft, the Denver Broncos selected the University of Buffalo Bulls All-American linebacker on Saturday night at number 257 overall. Murdoch, who set the NCAA's all-time record with 17 forced fumbles, took home the annual title and now knows exactly where his pro future is headed. It was an emotional moment trying to hold it all together in front of the family and everything, Murdoch said. I'm just really excited to get the opportunity. The main thing now is being able to help the team be able to win. I'm excited to play for the Broncos. That's a great team that I wanted to play for before the draft. Murdoch became Pete Lembo's first NFL draft pick since the coach arrived in Buffalo in 2024, and the first member of the Buffalo Bulls drafted since the Las Vegas Raiders selected defensive end Malcolm Kuntz in the third round in 2021. As Mr. Irrelevant, Murdoch will be honored with a parade and a banquet during the week-long Irrelevant Week in Newport Beach, California. He also receives a future trip to Disneyland.
I was so hoping the Bills would pick him up.
Oh, well.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, you're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 36 minutes after the hour. We turn now to our advice column asking Eric. Long-time massage therapist refuses to stop talking. Dear Eric, I've been going to the same massage therapist for about 15 years. I first met them at a chain massage company and then followed them to a boutique massage business before they moved their private services to their house. They have the same setup at home as the traditional massage company in a dedicated room. My appointments have been at their house for about 12 years, and we've obviously gotten to know each other as somewhat friends over those years. They are an excellent skilled massage therapist, and I value their abilities. My issue is that over the years, my massage therapist has started talking to me more and more during the massage session and occasionally talks to me the entire session. To get me talking, they ask questions that I feel are rude not answering. Sometimes the questions relate to the massage itself, like inquiries about body parts that I'd heard previously. This conversation seems integral to the treatment, but interrupt the experience. But topics also veer off to the mundane. I've tried starting my sessions by saying, I'm tired, and I'd like to just quietly drift off mentally, hoping that they get the clue. But that seems to only last about 10 to 15 minutes before they start asking something again. I've tried one-word answers or a mumble. I know I am still getting the physical benefits of the massage, but I'm missing the mental benefits since I sometimes can't even recall afterwards if they massaged a certain body part because I was mentally invested in the conversation. Since this has incrementally ramped up over the 15 years, I don't know how to tell them that I need critical questions, comments only without hurting their feelings. And it's signed, Need to Drift Off. And Eric replies, Dear Need, in every business or personal relationship, especially in a long-standing relationship, it's important to be heard. And if you're not being heard, it's important to point that out and ask the other person to make a change. I understand your desire to keep from hurting your massage therapist, but you're simply asking for a change, not insulting their behavior. So their feelings have to be their responsibility, as long as you're communicating fairly and with kindness. Before your next massage, talk to your therapist about your concerns and the pattern you noticed. Explain that you really need to have a silent massage and ask if this is something they can do. If they say yes, and then talk through the massage, you'll remind them that you had an agreement. If they can't keep it, you may need to move on. I'm presuming that you're paying for these services. It can be awkward when friendship and transactions meet, but if you're not direct about this, it's going to further fester into resentment and frustration. Next letter. Dear Eric, I've got a friend who is in her early 50s and has never dated. She lives with her sister, who is getting married in a few months. The sister confided with me that she fears my friend will spiral downward when her sister moves out. My friend has nobody outside me and her sister. She works remotely and she doesn't go out much. Next month is her birthday, and we're trying to motivate her to date, but have no such luck. And it's signed, at a loss as to what to do. Dear At Loss, start by talking to your friend and asking her what she wants. Dating may not be the answer. It's better to talk to her about your concerns and ask if she shares them. It's possible that she doesn't. It's also possible that she will welcome a chance to process this change in her life and would like some help thinking about how she will establish new rhythms and manage her time. But be clear, but judicious about the language you use. Spiral downward can mean a lot of things, and you don't want the intention to get lost in semantics. It might be easier to say something like, your sister's move is a big change, and I worry that you'll be lonely or depressed without her. I would feel the same way, and I'd like to be a support if you'll let me be. Has the change been something you've thought about too? Frankly, establishing and building platonic relationships is likely going to be much more fruitful than dating, as will exploring hobbies and interests. Dating can be great, but can also be emotionally fraught and taxing, especially if one isn't particularly inclined to do it. It's also very dangerous to use romantic relationships as an antidote to internal challenges. If your friend is lonely or struggling to establish her identity without her sister living in the house, time with friends and time intentionally getting to know herself will be a lot more productive.
Well, next we have a story from the world of education, and that is that experts, teachers, and lawmakers are at odds over a new literacy training program for teachers. New York State United Teachers Training Program for 20,000 teachers in the state on the science of reading, a new way of teaching literacy, was initially celebrated by the union. This honeymoon is over. A March article by education media nonprofit The Hechinger Report, published in the Albany Times-Union, posed a question in its headline: did New York blow $10 million on reading instruction that doesn't work? The article, which interviewed mostly downstate educators, blasted the union's teacher training program, claiming that many presentation slides in the 30-hour course ran contrary to the science of reading and, instead, reinforced aspects of balanced literacy and older, discredited teaching philosophy. The debate over the quality of the union's training program is part of a broader discussion about the Back to Basics movement that aims to overhaul how literacy is taught in the state. Governor Kathy Hochul's goal for Back to Basics was to eliminate diverging instructional practices and reshape how elementary students learn to read through a science-based strategy embraced by more than half of the United States. One state that embraced it, Mississippi, has seen staggering growth on standardized tests, while New York has stagnated in national assessments for about 3 decades. The science of reading refers to a massive body of research that shows how a person's brain learns to read. While school districts still choose specific curricula, using the science of reading approach means they are following a sequential phonics-based approach to learning sounds, letters, and words before advancing to reading, comprehension, and writing mastery. The movement marks a departure from balanced literacy, a disproven framework that emphasizes learning whole words before individual parts and stresses memorization and guesswork techniques.
Our next article is about Cuba, and the headline is Ghost Towns. Top tourist destinations are empty amid shortages and the U.S. energy blockade. As the sun sets in Pepite, a small town on the edge of Cuba's vast Zapata swamp, the road suddenly swarms with activity, but not with the red land crabs that once attracted hundreds of thousands of tourists annually to one of the island's top ecotourism destinations. The crowds now are residents pouring out of their homes in search of a cell phone signal when the lights flicker back on amid a U.S. energy blockade that condemned a large swath of the island to live without electricity. What tourists would want to visit us under these conditions, laments Manuela Baez, the owner of a rental house, now mostly empty, 2 miles away on the beachfront Playa Larga, the nation's top overnight destination. She said she lost count of all the reservations she had to cancel, including those from tourists already in the country, unable to find a taxi driver with sufficient gasoline to make the 2-hour trip from Havana. Official data underscore Baez's concerns. International tourist arrivals plunged 56% in February from a year ago. Both of Playa Larga's hotels are closed, and most of its tourist attractions are shuttered. Cuba has been plagued by shortages for decades, hampered by a state-run economy and a Cold War-era U.S. trade embargo that complicates everything from financial transactions to the import of fuel. But this time is different. More than a dozen residents and tourism industry workers of the Zapata region said, "We are much worse off even than during the coronavirus pandemic," Baez said, rattling off a list of lost reservations from countries like Switzerland, Canada, France, and Germany. Power cuts now run for 22 hours a day, with just a couple of hours of light in which residents scramble to call loved ones in Miami or Havana, or to prepare food before it rots in their refrigerators. Water runs short across many communities. Medical services, always complicated in far-flung corners of the country, are now a remote possibility, hampered by power cuts and lack of communications. Fuel for independent travelers who once flocked to the area in rental cars is largely unavailable. Trump's fuel blockade coincided with what historically is peak tourism season for Cuba, all but ensuring a disastrous year, a death knell for the industry that in 2024 still accounted for as much as 10% of foreign currency earnings. Many hotels and services, from Havana East to the top beach destinations Veradero, were forced to close when fuel shortages prompted many airlines to cut flights. "In these months, I'm always booked," said Fidel Silvestre Fuentes, who's 67, a rental homeowner who long provided accommodations to bird watchers who come from around the world to see the bee hummingbird, the world's smallest among other endemic species. Now we're empty. The Zapata Swamp region, much of it in a pristine national park, has more private rental homes open to tourists than even Cuba's top sun and beach destination, Veradero. Now it feels like a ghost town. The potholes grew deeper along the region's single access road. The coastal route between white sands of Playa Larga and the foot of the bay, and Playa Giran further out, feels abandoned, uninhabited, mostly by stray crabs, wayward residents on horseback, and men and women on bikes. Even the region's top attractions are closed. The Cuerva de Peces, a transparent, seemingly bottomless cave filled with colorful tropical fish, has been shuttered for 2 months, the guide told the reporter. The effects are especially dire in regions like Zapata, which offers residents few other options for work beyond tourism. If you don't own a rental home, you work in a restaurant. Or if you don't work in this sector, maybe you are related to someone who does, said Jorge Brito, a hat and souvenir seller, who now lives off a scarce few pesos a day. Without a doubt, we have hit rock bottom.
Well, next we have a story from Health News, and the headline is What to Know About Psychedelics. President Donald Trump signed an executive order this month directing health regulators to speed reviews of psychedelic treatments and increase federal funding for research into their use in response to advocates. Presently, almost all psychedelic drugs in the United States are considered Schedule I controlled substances in the same class as heroin or ecstasy, meaning they're deemed to have no medical use and high risk for abuse. Drug makers are testing several treatments derived from psychedelic compounds, and the strongest evidence for use of the drug so far come from trials in patients with severe depression or post-traumatic stress disorder who didn't respond to existing treatments. Psychedelic treatments work primarily by activating proteins on the surface of nerve cells that regulate the brain's ability to reorganize, form new connections, and repair damaged circuits. Unlike traditional psychiatric drugs that may be taken at home on a daily basis, these treatments are usually administered by medical personnel in a limited number of sessions to supplement intensive psychotherapy. The risks of psychedelic-assisted therapy include acute anxiety, panic, and confusion during administration of the medicine, as well as short-term worsening of mood or distress. An estimated 10 to 15% of patients experience longer-term negative effects. Psychosis or mania can also develop, especially in people with bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, or a strong family history of those disorders. Physical risks include nausea and headache with psilocybin, fatal cardiac arrhythmias with ibogaine, and transient increases in blood pressure, heart rate, and body temperature with MDMA. The risks of these effects are higher when the drugs are used outside of clinical settings.
And we'll end today's reading with a grim reminder of an anniversary. It's 40 years since the nuclear disaster. Ukraine commemorated the 40th anniversary of the Chernobyl disaster yesterday, amid fears that Russia's 4-year war could spark a repeat of the world's worst nuclear accident that led to thousands of deaths and devastating environmental consequences. Marking the disaster, which spewed radioactive material across much of Europe as Soviet authorities sought to hide its true scale, has taken on sharp new meaning during Russia's invasion of its smaller neighbor. Kiev says Moscow has repeatedly sent missiles and drones on a flight path near the plant to attack Ukrainian cities, even damaging a critical protective shield in an attack last year's. Russian forces also occupy Ukraine's nuclear power plant in the southeast, which Kiev's state atomic agency said on Sunday suffered its 15th temporary blackout since Kremlin troops took over in March of 2022. On Sunday, foreign officials, including the EU Energy Commissioner, arrived in Kiev to commemorate the anniversary and pledge fresh support for Ukraine's power system, which is regularly targeted by Russian airstrikes. Somber ceremonies took place in Kiev and at the Chernobyl plant itself, which was briefly occupied in the first weeks of the war, where President Vladimir Zelensky laid a candle with the visiting Moldovan president and other officials. Right now, the risks are no less great because of what Russia is doing with our nuclear power stations and in general with our energy and our land, Zelensky told reporters in Kiev. A Russian drone strike in February of 2025 punctured a massive arc installed over part of the Chernobyl plant in 2016 to shield a sarcophagus built in 1986 to cover tons of radioactive debris. No leaks were detected, and workers have since patched the hole. But the arc needs at least 500 million euros worth of more extensive repairs to prevent permanent damage, according to the European Bank. Thousands have since succumbed to radiation-related illnesses, such as cancer, although the total death toll and long-range health effects remain a subject of intense debate. Pope Leo on Sunday said the Chernobyl disaster left a mark on humankind's collective conscience, and he urged that atomic power always be used to support life and to build peace.
You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Monday, April 27th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ted Pajacki.
And I'm Ed Howard. Thank you for listening, and go Sabres!
Go Sabres!
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes